Hello, everyone. Welcome to a very special episode of Uncanny Treks. It is our second episode on the Al Ewing Avengers run. We are covering the 2015 series Captain America and the Mighty Avengers, but it's not your daddy's Captain America. It's Sam Wilson. It's Foul Cap. I'm going to be referring to him for sake of clarity. I am Bob in Cascadia. That is Matt in the Southland. He is joining me to talk about the 9 issues of Captain America and the Mighty Avengers. Matt, how are you doing this evening?
Doing pretty well, Bob. Although I'm going to try to just call him Captain America. I don't see what your problem is.
I got no problem with that. I just like clarity. You know, Lady Thor, Man Thor.
Oh, okay. The whole gender thing there. Okay, yeah.
I identify Odin's son as Man Thor. I don't want it to be stigmatizing. Say the gender.
Are you trying to say this is your Captain America, Bob?
I don't strongly identify with any Captain America, honestly.
Oh, okay.
I'm trying to disidentify with the whole American nationalism. This is Al Ewing's second Avenger series, Captain America and the Mighty Avengers 2015. And we've got Luke Ross doing the art on issues numbers 1 through 4, 6, and 8 and 9. My favorite work from his is he did the early issues of Jimmy Palmiotti and Justin Gray's 2000s Jonah Hex series. I think it started about 2006. He did a lot of the first 10 issues of that series. So that's what I know.
Recently, he's done a lot of the Star Wars stuff for Marvel. Marvel had that really big Star Wars infusion.
He seems to have settled into doing a lot of that.
Good for him to find that niche.
One wonders, does he do that because he's a fan, or does he do that because some editor was, man, you seem like you would be better at this. Go ahead and say, but I don't care about it at all. Our fill-in artist is Eben Coella. He did the art on number 5 and on number 7. He did some art on, I think it was Justice League Beyond 2.0. And more recently, he was one of the 2 main artists on John Hickman's Imperial.
He also did a lot of art for Ryan North's Fantastic Four.
Which you like, right?
Yeah, enjoying it. First couple of volumes.
Yeah, I really didn't like it, but I'm prejudiced against Ryan North. Yeah. I'm willing to own it might be better than I think it is. Do you think when it's done, that's something we should think about doing, or do you think no?
I don't think you would enjoy it, but it's...
Well, do you think me not enjoying it would make for good podcast?
It could, Bob. That is a possibility, just for you to have something to hate.
The question is, will the enjoyment that the listeners derive from it be worth all the crap I get? I guess that's the balancing calculation you have to make for yourself, Matt.
Well, I got a feeling you're going to give me some crap about this Mighty Avengers stuff, Bob.
At the end, Matt, there's a fierce debate coming at the end. Maybe we should have the fierce debate at the beginning to attract the clicks, but we're going to save the fierce debate at the end. So we're going to be here probably for a long time because somebody filled out the notes very thoroughly, Matt. And so we're starting with issue number 1. We take care of our own. We start out on page 2. We've got a bulletin board recap page. And that tells us that we're in for another Axis tie-in, Matt. We already saw an Axis tie-in in Avengers World. We're familiar with the concept. Good becomes bad becomes good. There's more nuances to it than that, but that's basically what it is.
I started reading Axis. Let me give the listeners just a quick little synopsis. Basically, the heroes defeat Red Onslaught, who is Red Skull with Professor X's brain.
Before you finish this summary, Matt, let me just say, you should have asked your good friend Bob, should I read Axis? And I would say, no, Matt, it's not very good. But I would have also said, Matt, you should read Uncanny Avengers, which is the series that's the semi-sequel to Uncanny X-Force, which you love. And Uncanny Avengers is the Avenger series that combines Avengers and X-Men that Rick Remender is doing about the same time as this series and the Hickman Avengers run. That leads into Axis.
Well, Remender is the reason I picked it up.
You would have enjoyed it more if you'd read, although I don't enjoy Uncanny Avengers. I don't think it's a very good series, but I could see you going either way on it.
I'm at a point now where there's adamantium sentinels that have been created by Tony Stark's Batman. I call him Bat Stark because he had all these contingency plans against the Avengers.
He's doing his Tower of Babel thing.
He literally creates these adamantium sentinels. Well, Bob, of the panels on the first page of this first issue, which of these do you feel the majority reaction to Sam Wilson taking on the role of Captain America would be?
In 2015, the majority reaction would probably be, yeah, the criminals have had it too good for too long. Good for him.
I'm more with the pigeon guy, Bob. When did that happen? Oh, there's a new Captain America. Okay, cool. I could see most people, though, acting like the MTN News Network, which is an analog for Fox News in this comic.
Yeah, it's a specific MTN Fox blonde commentator who we're going to come back to as a motif throughout these. Matt, I feel pretty confident in saying that your favorite pages from issue number 1 are pages 8 to 10, where you know the amazing Spider-Man, but do you know the amazing, awkward, apologetic Spider-Man?
I really like this, Bob, because it's a callback to everything Superior Spider-Man said in the Mighty Avengers run that we just covered. I don't think it would be as funny without that context.
It's funny, listeners, because I was referencing this when we were talking about Spider-Man, but I totally forgotten that this page is in the sequel series. And so it's interesting that Matt's saying it's better in context, because this page specifically, it's page number 9 of the 9-panel grid of Spider-Man apologizing to Luke Cage for Superior Spider-Man threatening his family. Yeah. He goes off on this tangent about how he, yelled at college protesters and Red Alice shrugged. That's a pretty famous page that floats around Twitter and floats around Tumblr, context-free. It is pretty funny that it does have this contextless afterlife to it.
Would you have let Spider-Man back on the Mighty Avengers team now that he's clear of Doc Ock?
I definitely would have, because at this point in the Marvel Universe, everybody getting mind controlled is standard business. There ought to be allowances made for such things. Yeah. But Luke Cage definitely isn't feeling it. Ewing does a good job of making Cage's decision feel harsh but not unreasonable. There's a nice twist at the end that we'll get to with it.
Correct.
Did you find the return of Plunderer, the dandy highwayman? He comes back in this issue, and he was also in the first issue of the first Al Ewing Mighty Avengers series. Were you happy about that?
Yeah, Ewing took his first run and redid it with the Inverted Heroes from Axis. Some parallelism here. Modified with evil characters. You got fascist Captain Falcon here.
Fascist Falcon Captain America, or fascist Falcap here. Then you've got Plunderer, who has come in believing now that you should plunder for others, you should plunder for the orphans. You've got other characters who are repeating from the first series, like Jason Quintrell, who works for the Evil Corporation and the Corporate Widow. We also get a reveal later on in this issue that Axis has made Luke Cage an evil businessman.
He's mean. He wears a suit now.
I do like that that's the sign that Luke Cage is an evil businessman, is he wears a suit. And it's also funny if you go back and you look at the message that he leaves on the bulletin board recap page. Ewing does a good job of writing it so that it doesn't sound super sinister when you first read it. But once you know that Al Ewing has flipped Luke Cage into being evil businessman Luke Cage, and you read it, you're, oh yeah, I can see all the mercenary instincts of Luke Cage here. So Matt, I thought another thing that might be your favorite part of this issue was the cliffhanger, where we see evil Falcon Captain America and evil hollow Tony Stark. They're going to take the Mighty Avengers out, and they have holograms of them, and they have them assessed by threat.
After my confusion with the power levels in our last episode, I appreciated the identification of Alpha, Beta, and Gamma members of the team. You've got Spectrum and Blue Marvel are your Alphas, She-Hulk and Luke Cage and Kalu are the Beta, and you've got Power Man and White Tiger are your Gamma. Did you question this at all? I don't like the Alpha and Beta, but I do like that they have rankings for their powers, so you know who the heavy hitters are.
There's a couple interesting layers to this. On the one hand, I'm not sure, because this is 2015, and definitely that pickup artist language of Alpha, Beta was already around, but it wasn't, I don't think, as ubiquitous as it is now. I don't know if Al Ewing is consciously trying to be, okay, evil Falcon Captain America and evil Superior Iron Man are thinking in these pickup artists,
yeah,
right? Or because you see in Star Trek, you see in a lot of things, using Alpha, Beta, Gamma as a way of saying A, B, and C. It doesn't have to be like sinister or right wing or misogynist.
Correct.
Right? So that aspect of it is potentially pretty funny. On the one hand, I think it works great on the page. It looks cool. It does make a certain amount of sense. If I were really going to nitpick at it, I don't know if it makes sense for Kalu to be Beta. He should be Alpha along with Spectrum and Blue Marvel, right? I don't really feel like I understand their relative power sets that well, but it would seem like as a sorcerer, he's probably on par with them.
I question that too. He seems really powerful.
If people are deeper fans of the Hulk, they could probably correct me on this, but She-Hulk is about as powerful as the Hulk. She-Hulk and Hulk both should be way more powerful than Luke Cage, is my understanding.
I question that as well, because the reason Luke Cage, I can see where his placement is White Tiger is able to do some damage to him.
If you think back, and again, this is super nitpicking and I don't like to do this, but if you think back to the first Mighty Avengers series that Ewing did, both Power Man and White Tiger are shown to be pretty powerful in that first series. It would almost make you think that the only Gamma here is Luke Cage. In one of the later issues of this, young Power Man refers to himself as a Hulk, and I couldn't tell if that was meant literally or if it was just meant as a metaphor or young Power Man talking trash. And I'm not even criticizing the comic for that. It's fine. You don't need to know that. But it was interesting that young Power later in this series literally does refer to himself as a whole.
Later on, we'll see he blocks Thor's attacks. So I'm thinking, he's got to be pretty powerful.
Power Man and White Tiger both do pretty good against Thor. Granted, it's Thor without Mjolnir, right? Because he's not worthy anymore. So he's probably a less powerful Thor than we're used to. Issue number 2 is Fast Money. And you wanted to begin with a question for me.
Doesn't Jason Quantrill remind you of Mr. Morden from Babylon 5?
I see where you're going for there. It's legitimate. I'm going to say no, because to me, and maybe I'm off base with this, but to me, there's something distinct about evil corporation versus evil alien conspiracy.
The way he's drawn, he gives me that look too. He looks like him. He's got that, he can be anywhere, wherever he needs to be all the time. He's just got that mystique to him.
He's a deal maker. Did the return of Blue Streak, also from the first Al Ewing Mighty Avengers series, make you happy?
Blue Streak came back, but also brought the Fast Five. You know what the Fast Five are, Bob?
I believe an old school New York hip hop reference, and it's a bunch of people on rollerblades.
If you didn't like just having one character in his first run with rollerblades, in his second run, you got 5 characters with rollerblades.
You seem not enthusiastic about the Fast Five, and that's okay. So my guess at your favorite panel was going to be on page 10 in issue number 2, and that was where we have one of the Fast Five, Redline, get sent by Kalu to the purple dimension in just his boxers.
That wasn't my favorite, Bob. My favorite panel's a little further up. It's on page 12. It's when She-Hulk and Blue Marvel are getting blinded by green light, and then they agree not to tell anyone that they were blinded by this character.
That Power Rankings cliffhanger from the last issue really got you in the mood for this gag, didn't it?
Really did, Bob.
My other guess at your favorite panel would have been a couple pages later, Matt, on page 16, where we learn that Luke Cage doesn't make jokes. He makes money. It is interesting that there is a little bit of a hip-hop aesthetic to this comic with the Fast Five, and also the way Ewing is writing Luke Cage, and he's in his business suit. He's a bit in his evil power hip-hop producer vibe.
Rap mogul.
Exactly. That's a better way to put it. He's in a rap mogul mode. All right, Matt. So we do have a reveal that at the cliffhanger at the end of issue 2 that Luke Cage has tried to sell the Mighty Avengers to Jason Quantrill and a Cortex Corporation. But it's revealed that Evil Cage, Mogul Cage, can't actually do this because She-Hulk turned the Mighty Avengers into a co-op. Also, you have Jessica Jones dumping Luke Cage and kicking him out of the house. He yells at her that you'll let me back in when I bring back my first million. And so Luke Cage gets recruited to rejoin the Avengers, but this time it's the evil Avengers. And so, Matt, do you want to run down the list of the members of the evil Avengers, the superior Avengers, the real Avengers in the cliffhanger at the end of issue number 2?
Well, Bob, we got Foul Cap, Superior Iron Man, Unworthy Thor, Medusa of the Inhumans, Scarlet Witch, and Wasp.
This is the point where the Inhumans are starting to be everywhere.
No.
A shining moment in the mid-2010s. And if you'll remember back to Avengers World, we already dealt with evil Scarlet Witch from Axis in that as well. Issue number 3 is the Avengers War. It's the Mighty Avengers versus the Superior.
We get the character of Gideon Mace here, and the big deal here is Gideon Mace is going to die. He is drawn to look like Robert Patrick, who was the T-1000 in... More recently, he was in Peacemaker. Peacemaker's
dad. Degenerate gambler in The Sopranos.
He looks just like this Gideon Mace character. It just cracks me up.
We talked about Mace in the last episode, right? He's a right-wing Vietnam vet who's an early Luke Cage enemy. I'd forgotten about this, but he has White Tiger's family killed in, I believe, like early 80s issue of Spider-Man.
To add to my shadowy stuff here, Bob, my Mr. Morden comparison, when Gideon Mace is killed, you see this scary-looking creature behind it. Shadow territory there. But you eventually learn that is the transformed Corporate Widow or something stupid, right? Quickfire, his own name.
That's why I think Corporate Widow is a better name.
That is a much better name.
At this point, Matt, in this series, I'm also just going to start referring to Monica Rambeau Spectrum as Auntie Monica. That's how she refers to herself, so I'm going to go with it. We do see Auntie Monica clean house in the Avengers War. She takes out Wasp. She nearly takes out Superior Iron Man. And then we also get to see a little bit of evil sorcerer versus evil sorcerer action. We see Kalu versus Scarlet Witch. Cool to see Kalu do that. I'm somebody who likes Marvel magic. We haven't seen Kalu take on non-Doctor Strange magicians, so I think that's cool. And then we were saying White Tiger and Young Power Man acquit themselves quite well against the unworthy Thor.
Why is she shooting green tigers at him, Bob?
Because she can't shoot green tigers.
Bob, I'm going to have to do some research on White Tiger.
So, Matt, my guess at your favorite page or your favorite panel in issue number 3, Avengers War, was when Spider-Man returns to the team to save Kalu from Falcap's shield. He takes up the shield and he gives a great speech, a stirring speech about how the Avengers shouldn't fight.
The MCU straight up ripped the sequence for Spider-Man's debut in Civil War.
I don't want to diss on Al Ewing's originality, and it's entirely possible that he is the guy who came up with that sequence. But is it possible that there's a similar sequence in the original Civil War, the Mark Millar Civil War?
50 years of Marvel at that point. I'm sure Spider-Man has webbed Captain America's shield at some point. Going back, Bob, my favorite panel, though, is actually Spectrum. Anti-Monica. She shoots herself out of Iron Man's repulsor after he had captured her light form in his armor. And I especially like the way his arm is exposed. It looks like a symbiote at that point because she busts out. Cool looking. I thought that was creative.
You got to give it to Ewing. He does do some really creative stuff with Monica's powers in this comic for sure. So our cliffhanger, and I wasn't totally sure how we were supposed to feel about this, if we were supposed to feel that it was noble, stupid, both. We know that the superior Avengers are evil, and Spider-Man doesn't know it at this point because of the course of the Axis crossover. But Spider-Man rather stupidly wants to give the evil Avengers a chance to prove themselves, one part of the cliffhanger, and then the other part of the cliffhanger is that Jason Quintrell has had Gideon Mace killed by the shadow xenomorph Corporate Widow, right?
This is where I question things because I'm currently reading Axis, and Spider-Man meets up with Carnage, who's a good guy in Axis.
I think there's a Hobgoblin Carnage miniseries where they're both good after Axis. I wouldn't say that it was amazing, but it was interesting.
I just don't understand why Spider-Man wouldn't understand this.
He knows that the villains are good, but does he know that the heroes are villains?
Yeah.
In issue number 4, we're to the other side of the tree. Rather than an Axis tie-in, this is more of an Axis fallout issue.
On the cover, Bob, they put a Sherlock Holmes hat on Power Man.
On young Power Man. Good catch. I didn't notice that. He's hanging out and being a detective with White Tiger and with Falcap.
We're trying to figure out who killed Gideon Mace. Off panel, Bob, just for the listeners' understanding, they have fixed the inversion thing by this issue. And most of the heroes are back to where they should be.
One minor little bit of trivia I wanted to note is that on page 9, we have some references to SWORD, which is the extraterrestrial version of S.H.I.E.L.D. And that's a little interesting because Al Ewing will go on to write a SWORD ongoing series during Krakoa.
When they are actually doing the investigation, did you dig Power Man's Chi crime scene recreation power thing he's got going?
A cool power. I think young Power Man is the guy, just his personality and the way he does superhero. I don't know if it makes a lot of sense for it, his power.
That seems like a detective-y type character.
Yeah, whereas young Power Man seems to be more a brash brawler, right? That's cool. You need those two. There's a couple miniseries about young Power Man. Maybe if I read those, I would see the great unity of the character and all this would make sense to me. We've talked about Corporate Widow. She's become inhuman xenomorph shadow creature, and she's got Gideon Mace in her nest.
Correct, Bob. She's making Gideon Mace into another type of creature. So we eventually find out, Bob, that Luke Cage being in bed with Kotex, that's a ruse.
Ewing writes these reveals pretty well of you're not sure for a bit, right? Evil Luke Cage passing as good Luke Cage or right good Luke Cage passing as evil Luke Cage. Those are pretty interesting scenes.
I have a question for you, Bob. At the bottom of page 17, is the Captain America facial expression worse than the one we pointed out in the last episode?
I don't find it to be that worse. Maybe I'm just saying that because I like Luke Ross more than Greg Land, but I don't think it's that. So, Matt, my guess at your favorite panel for this issue was on page 18 when the blonde Fox News lady says that the Punisher is a patriot.
Okay, I do like that panel, and that Cap, it lets us know that he wasn't a straight-up murderer of like the Plunderer's henchmen. They made sure to point that out, that guy didn't die.
Matt, what's the cliffhanger for issue number 4?
Well, Bob, after practicing his Captain America speeches on Anti-Monica, Falcap becomes the face of the Mighty Avengers while Luke Cage thinks he's undercover with Jason Quintrell. But he's really not, because Jason Quintrell knows.
Like the reader, Jason Quintrell is on to Luke Cage. And it is a little interesting. It took the whole first arc in the first Mighty Avengers series for the book to become Mighty Avengers. It takes the 4 issues of Axis tie-in for the book to become Captain America, Falcon leading the Mighty Avengers instead of more Mighty Avengers. But I'm not giving Al Ewing a hard time.
Do you think Al Ewing knew going in that he was going to have to do these tie-in things? Or do you think it just, I'm getting to do Mighty Avengers, and sorry, man, you got to do this too. You got to be able to tie this in there.
He probably knows that there's going to be a lot of tie-ins, And he probably knows that unless he hits some specific and hard to do sales metrics, it's not going to last more than 12 issues. So he probably writes with those things in mind, but I could see that the specifics would probably only become clear closer to the time.
If that were like my job, that would drive me insane. Oh, I want to tell this story, but oh no, you got to tie in this crossover with it somehow. And because you can see where he's going with it, but he had to get through all this other stuff to get there.
Honestly, this wasn't the reason I wanted to juxtapose the Ewing Hickman runs. The reason I wanted to juxtapose is just that there's specific plot overlaps that we'll get to at the end of this. But it is interesting to compare. We do the Hickman run, which is a cohesive run. He gets basically 80 issues of comics to do it, right? And granted, there's still tie-ins and he has to do jumping on points and what have you, but he basically gets the space to do it. And it's interesting to contrast. I'm not sure how much of the Avengers run fully wind up doing, but we'll probably at least wind up doing 5 of a 7 Avengers series. It's interesting to see what epic storytelling he can spin out when he's constantly having to restart the series. So, Matt, we're in issue number 5. This is We Are From Beyond trademark. And then on pages 3 and 12, we're going to see Blue Marvel, Explorer of the Impossible, and his son, Dr. Positron, as we observed in our last Mighty Avengers episode and our last Blue Marvel episode. They are both looking pretty Dr. Fate.
Total Dr. Fate, especially with the mask. My brain is having so much trouble reconciling that the neutral zone they explore and the negative zone are 2 different things, and they're not to be confused with the Phantom Zone or the Star Trek neutral zone.
Or the purple dimension. It's funny and confusing because the neutral zone that we see here is, even though it has the same name as the Star Trek neutral zone, the Star Trek neutral zone is the thing that's unlike all these others, right?
Correct.
These others are other layers of reality, whereas the Star Trek neutral zone is an area of space agreed on by treaty. That dimension of it's funny too.
All these other zones are empty space to some degree. There's not a lot of exploration into them as far as the plots go. We've traveled to the negative zone. There's not a lot there. We've traveled neutral zone. There's not a lot there.
My guess at a favorite panel, and sometimes I'm sincerely trying to guess your favorite panel. Sometimes I'm trolling you. Sometimes I'm inserting what my favorite panel is, and I'm just saying it's your favorite panel. It turns out that this is one of those later cases, because I thought you would really dig a panel on page 5 where we have Auntie Monica as naked Blue Marvel, and she's appearing to actual Blue Marvel, and Spidey's sitting around in a lab coat. That was a very hilarious and layered panel.
This was really stupid. Monica just standing around with her dick out and Spider-Man in a lab coat. Come on.
Her dick is not out. It's covered by light.
For the reader.
We're looking over Blue Marvel's shoulder, so we're seeing what he's seeing. We disagree about how funny it is to see Auntie Monica use her light powers to be a shapeshifter. But do you like Spider-Man in a lab coat?
Yeah, it is funny. I think you're right.
We also have a reference on this page to one of the great series. It's a little mini-series called Spider-Man and the X-Men, where Spider-Man is teaching at Wolverine's Jean Grey school. That's a really funny comic. It's also the source of a very famous page of Spider-Man that you see circulated around on the internet a lot. And we should definitely look at that comic sometime.
Spider-Man is the highlight in both of these Ewing runs because Superior Regular, that's probably the best part of these 2 runs.
I would say it was a huge highlight, but the use of Superior in the Hickman run was pretty fun too, but it was much more marginal than this, both because it was a larger cast and it was less real estate. It's funny to see it continue in the Ewing run, but it to be much more central.
Yeah, in the Hickman run, I think they were trying not to confuse any readers who weren't keeping up with the other stuff. So he's a little more neutral.
I'm also really grateful for Spider-Man in this issue because he gives us an alternative name for Dr. Positron, which is Blue Marvel Jr. That's awesome. That's a much better name for him. It's also a very funny reference to Elvis Presley's favorite superhero is Captain Marvel Jr., second Captain Marvel. And so, yeah, Blue Marvel Jr. That's great. I'm calling Dr. Positron Blue Marvel Jr. from here on out.
Dr. Positron would have sounded better as Professor Positron.
It would have sounded better, but I still think Blue Marvel Jr. is better.
Dr. Positron sounds like a superhero parody name. One of those shows that don't involve superheroes, but they have a superhero episode and they give them a name.
It's like a Venture Brothers character.
But my favorite panel was actually on page 16 of this issue, and it's Power Man roundhouse kicking the obvious glass vulnerable spot on the monster-fied Gideon Mace. He's got a big glass thing on his chest with his heart in it. Wonder what I should aim for.
Go for it, man. You're coming around to Young Power Man. You're coming around.
Yeah.
And A thing I really loved in this issue was the next page. You know, it's a pretty common thing to call Captain America the Sentinel of Liberty. And so we have a nice little splash panel of She-Hulk, Cap, and Kal-El winging in. And so in addition to calling Cap Sentinel of Liberty, we call She-Hulk Sentinel of Legality and Sentinel of Wizardry. That really made me laugh. So, Matt, what's the cliffhanger for issue number 5?
Well, Bob, Jason Quantrell removes his face to show that there's nothing beneath.
Dun, dun, dun.
And Power Man and White Tiger have been turned into monsters. So, Bob, the next issue, number 6, is not in continuity. And on the cover, it's a literal face-off.
Everybody's losing their face, Matt.
Remember when Sarah Palmer did this in Twin Peaks: The Return?
It was freaky, Matt.
The difference was there was teeth in the darkness there. It should have added some teeth to these.
Right. I thought your favorite panel might be early in this issue, Matt, where we found it is not actually what it stands for, but we find out that WESP might stand for Weird European Scientific and Philosophical Extremist, the great acronym. Also, the WESP scientists are splitting hairs and they're saying we're not Nazis, we're nihilists. That's really funny. Nice Big Lebowski reference.
That's really funny, Bob, but no, that's not my favorite panel. I want to point out here in this scene, we discover that Cortex has opened a portal to whatever lies beyond the fabric of reality. And while also having the Beyonders in the mainline books is so integral, it's confusing here. It confused you as well, right? Like,
it did initially, although I guess to give them a little bit of credit, Hickman is mostly calling the Beyonders the Ivory Kings, which is a little bit more of a poetic and a little bit cooler of a name. And I think the issues later clarify that the Beyond Corporation doesn't have a lot to do with the Beyonders, although you glommed onto another line where it sounds maybe they're in some indirect way drawing on the Beyonders. The other thing I'd forgotten about that's important to emphasize, so you've never read Next Wave, right?
I never have, no. It's apparently 12 issues.
We should read it sometime. I would say we should cut it up into 2 episodes because it's pretty funny. It's worth doing a little slower than some of the stuff we do. And Next Wave, its continuity was dubious for a while, and its portrayal of characters like Monica Rambeau and Ilsa Bloodstone was pretty different than they had been portrayed in the Marvel Universe up to that point. But the versions of Monica Rambeau and Elsa Bloodstone were so cool that the in-continuity versions of them started to take on versions of the Next Wave versions, if that makes sense.
It was so good, they just decided to make it continuity.
Exactly.
Which means I probably need to read it.
You probably need to read it. It's a very good, very influential comic. And the thing about Next Wave, one of the things that this comic is doing that I think is pretty good is it's reconciling the prior 1980s versions of Monica Rambeau with the Next Wave version of Monica Rambeau and trying to put kind of a unified version of Monica forward. Granted, I wasn't remembering this super well, but the Beyond Corporation is a big part of Next Wave. When they start referencing the Beyond Corporation here, you're supposed to have read Next Wave and be, oh, Next Wave.
That's probably why they put that little thing down there that said, see Next Wave number 1 through 12.
Indeed. I don't know the specifics of this, but the Beyond Corporation is also going to show up in Nick Spencer's run on Amazing Spider-Man, which was maybe 5 years after this.
Well, Bob, once we figure out that this guy is not himself, Mr. Quantrell, he zaps Luke Cage and Jessica Jones into space.
The caption calls them the unwilling space team. Luke and Jessica just float in the void, which really made me laugh.
But then on Earth, Bob, we have the quick response team, which are not very quick because, unfortunately, our other heroes have turned into monsters and what's called the Freaky Deaky Monster Team.
I had other guesses at your favorite panels, which obviously turned out to be wrong. One is on page 18, and you have Spider-Man joking that exposure to cosmic rays is going to cause Luke and Jessica to give birth to Luke Fantastic, and both Blue Marvel and Blue Marvel Jr. are yelling at Spider-Man and asking him what's wrong with him for making that joke. Then we also have a nice little continuity reference on page 19 of Spider-Man really regretting that time he taught the Beyonder how to poop in Secret Wars 2 in the 80s.
The Luke and Jessica line, I did laugh out loud, for real. That was funny. But no, my favorite panel is directly before all that. It's the Blue Marvel Rescue from page 16 to 18. It's what I used to reading Superman comics. You could just hear the music start, dun, 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 dun. He's coming to rescue them. And his costume is way cooler looking here, too. I don't know what they did differently. The armor on the arms looks way better than in previous illustrations.
If you just drew him standing still, you might think it looks a little silly, but the way Ross draws the armored arm in motion looks cool. I agree. Okay, Matt. So the cliffhanger here is we find out the Beyond Corporation is back, and that means Auntie Monica is not fucking laughing.
Oh, yeah, she's not happy about that. She knows that stuff's not cool. So, got to figure that out. And that's why issue number 7, Bob, Kicksplode.
Which is also a pretty direct Next Wave reference. I was drawn to page 8 on this, where Spider-Man says, "God, I love super science," which is pretty funny. Although the next part I didn't like as much. Blue Marvel Jr. responds with a Battlestar Galactica reference. I wasn't as big a fan of that.
Bob, the dumbest part in this comic, I'm just going to go ahead and say it, was on page 14. Captain America little remembers he can fly. He's been fighting these guys. He's like, oh yeah, I can fly, and they can't.
To me, I can see that. He's having to do both the Falcon angles and the Captain America angle, and he's focusing so much on being Captain America, he's forgetting what he can do as Falcon.
He's got wings.
There's maybe something clever. I'm a lot more charitable. My guess that your favorite panel was on page 16, and it was we see Spider-Man's greatest fear. He becomes President Superior Spider-Man, but he doesn't have pants.
Some of the Spider-Man stuff's hit or miss, I'll admit. That one I didn't think it was as funny.
Does raise the old joke of how funny should Spider-Man actually be? Should he be funny or should he be cringy?
On page 18, Bob, that was my favorite panel, is we actually get to see the full body of Blue Marvel's lost son. And he looks like Dr. Manhattan.
Now, Spider-Man may be cringe, Matt, but that doesn't mean he isn't perceptive. And on page 20, he intuits that Blue Marvel and Auntie Monica are dating. So the cliffhanger is old man Steve Rogers is calling the Mighty Avengers hotline. If I'm remembering correctly, the first 7 issues were all one trade. This is the end of the opening, and in some sense, the only story of Captain America and the Mighty Avengers. We're in for our 2-issue finale. That's a tie-in to Last Days, which listeners, you may or may not remember, is the arc right before Secret Wars. They kind of tie in right before Secret Wars.
Ewing got to tell like a little bitty piece of his actual story he wanted to tell between axes in this tie-in here. He got to tell that whole Beyond story.
Did. So starting out issue number 8, I was going to ask, did you like we start with old man Steve Rogers and Luke Cage giving a hostile version of Hickman's New Avengers? Did you enjoy that?
It was interesting to see the lead up to their eventual arrival at the scene and to get the different opinions of the Illuminati and the actions being taken and the incursions. It's always fun to see that part. It's reintroduced, but from a different perspective. Because he's telling you what's going on, but we've already read 2 or 3 times in different Hickman books.
It's interesting to see it repeated in a book not by Hickman, because we saw Hickman repeat it both literally and then symbolically in the Hickman run itself, too. I do like that Kalu is proud of Doctor Strange. He's the only one of the Mighty Avengers. He's, nope, my guy, Doctor Strange, has finally learned it.
Well, Steve Rogers does not like Kalu. He still sees him as a bad guy.
Some of the tension between old man Steve Rogers and Kalu is pretty well done in this issue. So, Matt, on page 15, Auntie Monica calls a secret meeting of the Mighty Avengers, but she excludes Falcap and she excludes Spidey because she thinks they're too close to old man Steve Rogers, which I appreciated that as a touch, I have to say.
I understand Falcap. I don't know, Spidey, really?
I think it's pretty established in the Spider-Man comics that Spider-Man is a huge, huge fan of Captain. I might be wrong about this, but I think it might be Uncle Ben was a huge Captain America fan. So Matt, did you like the sermon that Blue Marvel and Auntie Monica give to Mr. Fantastic and Black Panther at the end of the comic?
It was fun. I like knowing that Blue Marvel is working on a solution himself to the incursion problem. And I don't really disagree with him on what he said. Their think tank, they should not have limited it to 5 people. I don't think that was the smartest idea.
It's an interesting debate, right? On the one hand, there's something about the sermon that annoys me. But you're right, that's a good way to put it. But on the other hand, it's like, well, you can't include everybody in a debate always,
Which
right?
is Panther's point, right?
There's a nice bit where Blue Marvel is pretending to speak for all 7 billion people on Earth, right? So Black Panther's just, you talk to all of them?
You got to have a happy medium. I feel there's a better number between 5 and 7 billion that probably could have created a better solution.
It's a fair point. And it is an interesting thing. Blue Marvel and Auntie Monica are taking the Steve Rogers line about what the Illuminati did. But in another way, it's interesting because they're trying to take a more meta position where they're saying both Steve Rogers and the Illuminati are wrong. They're setting up, especially Auntie Monica is setting up that she and Blue Marvel are going to try and get much, much bigger. And so that's going to be the basis of the Ultimates comic, which will, I believe, launch after Secret Wars. That's what we're going to turn to next. And listeners, it's pretty confusing, but I'll just go ahead and say it now. It's the 2016 version of the Ultimates. Saying volume number, I think, is difficult because there's Ultimates 2, Ultimates Ultimate. So I'm not sure what's volume 2 versus volume 3, right? But it's the Ultimates series that came out in 2016. It's also sometimes called Ultimates Omniversal.
Well, Bob, issue number 9. I'm not going to lie. This issue was pure cheese, Bob. Pure cheese. Page 3. They've got 242 minutes until the end of the Earth, and they're worried about taking the Avengers name off the sign for legal reasons.
I get your point there, and it's a good point. The joke is not that they are doing it. The joke is on the law for making them. Maybe putting a bow on things. We do have Jessica Jones on page 5 speaking on behalf of reader fatigue for Avengers spinoff, which, as much as I like this comic, is definitely vulnerable to that.
At which Luke Cage says we should do Friend Force, Bob. You want to do Friend Force?
Not do Friend Force, Matt, but I would do Heroes for Hire, which is maybe the difference between you and I.
Friend Force.
What was your favorite panel in this issue, Matt?
Well, Bob, my favorite panel is when Monica is revved up to take out the Ultimate World, but she backs out at the last second. Because Monica Rambeau, she could have destroyed that world quickly. Boom. Mm-hmm. She has a conscience.
Anything to deal with the Ultimate Universe quickly, I'm in favor.
What's your favorite panel, Bob?
My favorite panel was not the very next page, but shortly thereafter on page 16, we see Kalu and Wong mend fences, and in Stephen Strange's absence, they both put their feet up on Strange's desk, which I think you thought was cheesy, but I thought was cool and sweet. And like I said, I really like what happens with Kalu in this series, and I don't think any other writers than Ewing have picked him up, and that's a shame.
So, Bob, your favorite panel was not the last 3 pages of some Santa Claus-looking man talking to another dude about the end of the world.
The pages get first-person camera on the panels, and it's fulfilling the ideological promise of the book that anybody can be an Avenger, anybody can help people out. I do appreciate that the book has a point of view, and it has a theme, and that it's trying to draw that home. Not enough comics do that, right? I would agree with you that it's maybe not the best end, but I appreciate that Ewing is swinging for something. I'll give him credit for that.
Not my favorite.
Okay, Matt. So would you agree that we should rank Mighty Avengers and Captain America and Mighty Avengers as one thing on the list?
Okay with that, yes.
I will say this sets up the Ultimate series more than I remembered it doing, but I think the Ultimates series is going to be separate enough that we can rank the Ultimate series separately, but we can consider that when we get to the Ultimate series if we want to actually fold that into the ranking of this and adjust it. Here's where I think we're going to get to the disagreements. My first thought on ranking this, listeners, we've got a 27-item list. Number 1 is the Hickman Fantastic Four run. Numbers 25 through 27 are the 3 runs of Gotham Knights. My first thought for ranking this would be above the Paul Dini Detective Comics and Streets of Gotham, which would make it the new number 10. Then my sort of alternative thing, if you thought the Dini run was better than this, I could definitely see that, and I could definitely grant that. So my alternative ranking then would be to drop it down and make it the new number 16, which would be in between Azzarello and Alex Maleev's Get Joker, but above the Blue Marvel comic that we read a couple weeks ago.
This is going to be difficult, Bob. I'd probably put it between Avengers World and Avengers AI.
Oh, man, that's outrageous.
I liked Avengers World more than I like this.
That's crazy to me, man. So Avengers World is not even a story. And Avengers World is just 4 different missions.
But there was a really good X-Men issue.
There was an okay X-Men issue. But Avengers World doesn't really develop characters. It just brings in a bunch of new characters and doesn't do much with them, and nobody else did anything with them. Avengers World has super, super cringy, time-displaced Avengers children. This Mighty Avengers series does really good things with Spider-Man, which you like a lot.
Spider-Man stuff, that's a positive. The Spider-Man stuff is great.
The stuff it does with Spider-Man is better than anything in Avengers World by far. Even though I know, like, Luke Cage and She-Hulk and Monica Rambeau are not your favorite characters.
The inclusion of Blue Marvel I like too, because you never see him anywhere.
Well, that was going to be another point. This has to be above the original Blue Marvel comic. The way it expands the Blue Marvel character, the way it fills in a history, the way it gives them a supporting cast.
It does.
Luke Cage, Monica Rambeau, the Young Power Man, Sam Wilson, and White Tiger are not your favorite characters, but this sets up things that can happen with those characters. I don't think Avengers World does that for any of its characters.
So the idea is that because Avengers World doesn't branch out to anything else, it's not as.
I think it's just not doing anything with its characters. It's having a bunch of side characters and a bunch of new characters do things that are dragged out and decompressed that don't ever amount to anything.
You had two options. You said number 10 above Denny, and
You
that's a
definitely
no-go. No.
You definitely think Dini is better than
Oh.
that's reasonable.
Okay. You want to
But-
put it at number 16, below Azzarello's Get Joker. That's where we got to talk. I like the origin of Blue Marvel. I thought it was really interesting. Without that structure from that comic, you would not really appreciate anything going on with Mighty Avengers.
That's true, but we also have Hickman Avengers at number 6, and we have Infinity Gauntlet at number 20. And you couldn't have Hickman Avengers without Infinity Gauntlet. But nonetheless, I still think Hickman Avengers is much better than Infinity Gauntlet. Below Blue Marvel, I like the Ridley Black Panther is fine, but I don't think either of us are huge fans of it. The Dini Gotham City Sirens, I think I like more than you, but has its flaws and it trails off. Then you didn't like the Matt Wagner Dr. Midnight.
Let's go ahead and put it at 16. I can live with 16 because it's close enough to Blue Marvel. It's whatever.
I'm glad I sort of talked to you, sort of bullied you.
Yeah. If I had my option, I would put this between. I still think I liked Avengers World better. I need to go back and figure out why.
If you get time to look back in between now and the next episode, I'd be very curious.
Let me go back and because we've read so much, Bob, at this point that it's. But I do remember all the different scenarios and everything. I didn't seem to have an issue with it as much as you did.
It was my third time reading Avengers World,
Oh.
so fatigue with it had really set in where not all of this stuff, but a lot of this stuff, we're on my second time through it.
If it's mediocre to begin with, and it's your third time reading it.
Even without that, I would much prefer the Ewing Avengers to either Avengers World or Avengers AI. Where else does the list seem off or imbalanced to you, other than Hush?
We have some strange things above what I would consider these very long thought out narratives. Somebody put a lot of effort and time into telling a long-term story versus some of these short-term things we have, these smaller single issue things or these smaller stories, more condensed stories. Avengers World, we stuck both the Avengers down pretty low. When you look at long-term storytelling,
Thanks for listening, listeners.
thanks for listening.